The Akkadian Empire was the world's first known territorial empire, a political experiment so ambitious that it reshaped human history. Emerging in Mesopotamia around 2300 BCE, under Sargon of Akkad, it unified dozens of city-states across the Tigris and Euphrates valleys, imposing centralized administration, standardized language, and unprecedented imperial control. For more than a century, Akkad represented stability, order, and power in a region defined by environmental uncertainty. And then, just as rapidly as it rose, it disappeared. Unlike later empires that collapsed under invasion or rebellion, the Akkadian decline left behind a puzzle written into the soil itself. Archaeologists long searched for evidence of conquest-burned cities, mass graves, or shattered fortifications, but found none that could explain the empire's systemic failure. Instead, they uncovered abandoned settlements, sudden demographic contraction, and signs of economic breakdown without widespread violence. The cause was not an army. It was the climate. At the height of Akkadian power, Mesopotamian agriculture depended on finely balanced rainfall patterns and river irrigation systems. Northern regions relied heavily on winter rains, while the south depended on canal-fed floodplains. This balance was sustainable only under relatively stable climatic conditions. Around 2200 BCE, that stability ended. Paleoclimate data from multiple independent sources confirm a sudden and prolonged drought event across the Near East. Sediment cores from the Gulf of Oman reveal a sharp spike in wind-blown dust, indicating intensified aridity. Oxygen isotope records from cave formations in Iran and Turkey show reduced precipitation lasting several centuries. These signals converge around what scientists now call the 4.2 kiloyear event, major climatic disruption that affected civilizations from the Mediterranean to South Asia. In northern Mesopotamia, the effects were immediate and devastating. Archaeological layers from sites such as Tel Leilin show a thick deposit of wind-blown silt covering abandoned cities, evidence of rapid desertification. Grain storage facilities were left unused. Administrative buildings were deserted. Entire regions once under Akkadian control were depopulated within decades. This was not gradual decline. It was environmental collapse. The empire's centralized structure amplified its vulnerability. Akkad relied on surplus grain from the north to support urban centers and military garrisons. When rainfall failed, agricultural output collapsed. Supply chains broke down. The state could no longer feed its administrators or soldiers. Imperial authority, dependent on redistribution, unraveled from the inside. Southern Mesopotamia faced a different but equally destructive problem. Reduced river flow led to increased soil salinity as irrigation water evaporated faster than it could flush salts from the fields. Crop yields declined steadily. Written records from the period describe famine, social unrest, and desperate migrations. These texts do not speak of enemies. They speak of hunger. As environmental pressure mounted, populations moved south and east in search of water and arable land. This mass displacement destabilized cities already under stress. Urban overcrowding, competition for resources, and breakdown of governance followed. The empire did not fall to a single blow, it fragmented. Later Mesopotamian texts refer to this period as one of chaos, where order collapsed and the gods withdrew their favor. But beneath the mythology lies a real, measurable phenomenon. Climate models and archaeological evidence now confirm that the Akkadians faced a multi-century drought that exceeded their adaptive capacity. Attempts at resilience are visible in the archaeological record. Irrigation systems were extended. Settlements shifted closer to reliable water sources. Administrative control tightened. But these measures required labor, resources, and coordination, exactly what environmental stress was eroding. The feedback loop was unforgiving. By 2150 BCE, the Akkadian imperial system had ceased to function. Cities remained, but empire vanished. What followed was not immediate recovery, but a long period of regional decline. Urban life contracted. Trade diminished. Political fragmentation dominated the landscape for generations. The Akkadian collapse was not unique, but it was the first time humanity witnessed the failure of an empire too large and too centralized to adapt quickly. Its downfall exposed a fundamental weakness of complex systems. Efficiency without flexibility becomes fragility under sudden change. What makes the Akkadian story especially haunting is how closely it mirrors modern vulnerabilities. Dependence on centralized supply chains, climate-sensitive agriculture, and administrative complexity created strength in stable times and weakness in unstable ones. The Akkadians could not predict the climate shift they faced. We can. Their story was nearly erased because it did not fit traditional narratives of conquest and heroism. It was preserved instead in dust layers, abandoned fields, and isotopic ratios locked in stone. History did not forget the Akkadians because they were insignificant. It forgot them because their collapse challenged the illusion of control. The Akkadian Empire did not fail because it was poorly governed or technologically backward. It failed because environmental change outpaced social adaptation. And in that failure lies one of the most important lessons the ancient world ever left behind. The ground of Mesopotamia still holds that lesson, waiting for those willing to read it, not as myth, but as data.